I, like a lot of 2010s kids, grew up with Minecraft. Remember we got it on the Xbox 360 one day, and I think in 2013, where me and my sister would play it endlessly, usually in creative or would keep inventory on. We'd buy the texture packs, we'd buy the skin packs, we believed in all the different fake rumors like Herobrine or reviving the dragon back before that became a real thing. Though of the two of us, I was significantly more the Minecraft kid. I would constantly watch videos on Minecraft, from Popular MMOs and Gen, to Newscape Pro's old Undertale murder roleplay videos. I watched that old Howcast How to Build a Roller Coaster video. I own plushies, toys, I had that creeper hoodie that lets you zip up your face, which I'm kinda sad I don't own anymore. I even remember that I really wanted to become a Minecraft YouTuber when I grew up, called Creeper Cake or something, which, now that I think about it, makes my current name of CutCafe all the more fitting, and I am still decently into Minecraft. I still watch videos of it from time to time, even if I've stopped memorizing every single little thing about the game ever since around 1.15 or 16, and I've stopped caring about the mob vote or the new updates since around 1.19 to 1.20. That being said, of anyone to have Minecraft-based merchandising and products beamed into my retinas as a child, it's me! And even when I stopped playing as regularly, I generally had it in my mind that Minecraft didn't have that much weird merch. I knew that there were some toys and a redstone lamp, maybe some more action figures and posters now that the Minecraft movie happened, but overall I thought it basically ended there, and that Minecraft only had a few interesting products and then mellowed out into the common t-shirts, toys, mugs, and plushies that every company and now YouTuber under the sun does. But then I was looking into some of the works by Sarah Grayley. They're this artist that does comics, and many know them from their series called Our Super Adventure, but I was searching because every now and then when the algorithm gives me enough money to take a risk and talk about something super niche, I was considering taking a look at Sarah's recent graphic novel series they made called Pizza Witch. Maybe talk about some of their older webcomics and send some positive love towards the artists in these apocalyptic trying times. Though when I looked through their store page, I immediately got distracted when I saw Minecraft the official graphic novel. What? There's no way that could be true, but sure enough, there it is, and in the corner it has an official Mojang seal of approval. So then I got curious. Sarah's page only has 3 volumes, are there more? And that one question alone opened the floodgates, as I learned that while there aren't more of this series, there are actually several 100% official Minecraft comics, graphic novels, and manga, and some of them are as recent as this year. The only Minecraft books I had ever been aware of were the Minecraft Essential handbooks, which don't really count seeing as they're more of guides and fantasy, and this one unofficial set of books called Invasion of the Overworld that my parents got me the full set of one year, and the only thing I remember about it is that when I read it, I hated it so much that I tried to pawn it off to random kids at school for 20 bucks. Which is to say that I not only didn't know that there were official Minecraft books outside of the guide booklets, but I didn't know that there were graphic novels and comics, period. So when I learned that all of these have this seal of Mojang's approval, I just had to know how interesting or weird these books were to know if little me was missing out. Again, one of them is called Minecraft the Manga, and looks like this. I have to know! Now, there are a lot of official Minecraft books, so just to really clarify, I will only be looking at graphic novel or comic-style books rather than the text chapter book novels, because otherwise there just wouldn't be anything to show on screen at all, and also I always just preferred visual books. I also won't be looking at every single comic, namely there is Minecraft Open World that I didn't go through, there are some exclusive free Comic Day comics from Dark Horse, and I also had to completely cut one of the books from this video because of how long this video was getting, but I did go through 6 different series amounting to over 20 books total, so I think you can forgive me. So let's gear up and head into the mines as we look at the weird world of Minecraft's many official comics. Now, I feel like if any of these to go through, what better to start with than the one that led us down this rabbit hole in the first place, Minecraft, written by VR Monster and illustrated by Sarah Grayley. Now, it's just called Minecraft, but I'm going to be calling it Everrealm, seeing as that's what the in-universe Minecraft server is called. Anyways, Minecraft Everrealm is apparently Mojang's first stint into doing Minecraft comics, and as such has some of that early installment weirdness, where it's very clear they're trying to test whether people would even want something like this, and as such, a lot of it feels less like an official spin-off and more like something you'd randomly come across across on DeviantArt, but don't get it twisted, it still has the moist stink of what I can assume is upper management preventing them from doing anything interesting with the property. Something interesting to note though is that out of all of the books I looked through, this is the only one where instead of taking place literally in Minecraft, it's about school kids that happen to play it. Though despite it wanting to be this mix of real world and digital world setting, it kind of fumbles the bag as everything that happens IRL just doesn't matter. It mostly feels as though every in real world moment is entirely pointless, especially with these long logging off panels you see in the first book that just kind of feel like bloat that bog down the story. The series mostly follows Tyler and their friend group, as recently Tyler was forced to move away and his only connection to his old friend group is through Minecraft. In the first book, I think they wanted to do a sort of fish out of water plot with Tyler feeling like he's already being forgotten about, which may make you think I just contradicted myself with the whole IRL plots don't matter thing, but you'll quickly find that Tyler moving away doesn't affect the plot at all. And once you're like a third of the way through the first book, it's never brought up again. This set of books' biggest problem though is the pacing, as pacing is way too fast. In just the first book, we learn that they want to fight the Wither, then we time skip to them getting the final skull that they need, then the literal hand of the author forces them to summon it early, then everyone's like, oh no, we have to battle, and then it instantly gets killed in one hit by Tyler when he logs on seconds later despite supposedly being in soccer practice, and the day is saved. All of these events occur within just 10 pages. That's not exaggeration, it's pages 16 through 26 exactly. And I do mean the literal hand of the author, as when they get the skull, one of them gets grabbed and forced to place the skull early. Ooh. It just felt extremely jarring to start off the conflict of the story this way, having the main starting problem here come down to, whoops, magic tentacles made me do it. It just feels unsatisfying when, given these are established to be kids playing the game Minecraft, they could have just had Evan jump the gun and place the skull on the head without thinking it would summon the boss right away, making a genuine mistake. But as far as the story is concerned, it being tentacles or a genuine mistake is interchangeable because they move on near instantly and Tyler makes up with the cast within the next 2 pages, where Tyler also never brings up being worried about the move or being left behind by their friends ever again. And I bring that up because the group almost works together too well. Anytime there is a problem between them, they immediately know the right combo of words to say, and the other person instantly forgives them, and then it's never brought up again, and it doesn't affect anyone or how they act every single time as though it never happened at all. It feels almost like the writer was too afraid that if any of the characters acted like children or made mistakes that weren't instantly resolved in the most mature PTA-approved way possible, that the people reading it would want to copy the behavior or something? I don't know. But you can even feel this weird, too scared to have the characters have a problem issue in the pacing itself, because every conflict they have is immediately solved the page after it appears. They lose some of their stuff, Tyler gives a very generic 2-sentence pep talk that convinces everyone immediately it's like it never happened. They're worried about running out of Eyes of Ender. They immediately find the stronghold right then and there. They're in the stronghold, need to be careful? They instantly find the Ender portal anyway, so it doesn't matter. They need to destroy all of the End crystals. Let's immediately skip straight to the last one. They're fighting the dragon. They immediately kill it within like 3 arrows and then spend the rest of the time talking about how cool and smart they are and how totally difficult it was, despite us not being allowed to see any of the difficult parts. Conflict resolution, conflict resolution. The first book ends after they defeat the Ender Dragon, get the egg, and return home, with everyone in the server praising them. These two are dating now, I guess, and book 1's over. Book 2 has us follow insert generic bullying plot written by people who've never been bullied in their life. I know that's a little harsh to say, but I've always just felt like very inherently infuriated whenever I see bullying plots, because it always feels like that they boil down to either just say no and they'll suddenly stop picking on you, or bullies are bullies because they had a bad life, so be nice to them and they'll realize being mean sucks. Maybe I'm just triggered or whatever, because my school growing up was very much a, if talking it out doesn't work, then you're the problem school, and saying no is inherently bad because it's negative school. And so I just naturally get frustrated with these kind of plots because I was told a bunch as a kid that if those two things didn't work, then I was inherently a bad person and deserved it. But even without that, I feel like most people can agree that this is just one of those generic bullying plots where they just call Evan a no friends loser and do a few mean things they saw in a high school movie one time, which doesn't actually get brought up again, but I really feel like this could have actually been an interesting angle if they didn't immediately forget about it, plot-wise. Because I just feel like this would have worked so much better if Evan put the final skull on accident in book 1 like I said, because then Evan could have had some feeling of insecurity, or or believing that it could be true, that could then be tackled and fixed by the crew rather than what they actually do in the book, which is way dumber in my opinion. I know I'm being very critical of this series, but I promise I praise it later, trust me. On Tyler's side, his newer school friends he got tell him of the location of an ocean monument because they want to go fight the Elder Guardian. Though when Tyler gets their friends together, they find the place ravaged. Apparently the new school friends were digitally kidnapped and their stuff stolen. Evan is worried that's bullies, but gets reassured that there are no bullies in Everrealm before they set sail. There's some journeying, which is a bit better than how the last book had just skipped instantly to the next point, but it turns out there are bullies on the server. But the bullies are completely different to the other Evan plot bully guy, and they roleplay as pirates because they're in the ocean. The group gets caught snooping, and so they talk one-on-one. Anyways, the pirates are doing it because they want good gear and cool stuff, though apparently they didn't try that hard given that Tyler & Co.'s base is packed with goodies, including the beacon that is beaming a light into the sky and an Ender Dragon egg they got last book, which would have been cool if they had called back to that, but they didn't. Anyways, we've got another Tentacle Ex Machina moment as they suddenly find the magical lever of move the plot along because they think it's gonna save their friends or something, but unfortunately it just frees the Elder Guardian the pirates were using as leverage. Now I got confused at first and didn't fully understand what happened because I didn't realize that they had it trapped and thought they had tamed it or something, but looking back on the other page, it shows that the Elder Guardian was surrounded by these glass panes, I guess? But upon looking at this, there are several problems immediately clear with this. 1. TNT can't blow up things in water, so the TNT going into the water shouldn't actually do anything unless it explicitly landed on top of one of the planes, which I mean, maybe it did. I guess that's plausible. 2. The Elder Guardian jumps in the panel that you introduce it. It jumps higher than the pen, which means it could have left at any point. In fact, the pen is literally just 1 block tall, which makes me wonder, did you really think nobody would want revenge at any point? Because it would take like 1.2 seconds to break the thing out and let it swim away if it's that much leverage to you. 3. If the only thing keeping the Elder Guardian here is this small glass pane pen, then why have a singular lever that can immediately blow up said pen readily available? You know people are likely gonna come being upset that you raided their stuff, given that's apparently their main way of playing Minecraft. Do you really just think nobody's ever gonna want to fight you in any capacity by just pressing left click on their mouse? Why not just remove the lever and have it on your person like a key? That's what a bunch of people used to do in my era of Minecraft when they had traps. Actually, now that I think about it, what's stopping someone from just blowing up the boat in general? The TNT is inside of the ship, exposed for the cannons like we can see in multiple panels, which means if someone just decided to destroy the boat, like Cadence brings up not even 2 pages earlier, then they could just instantly evaporate your boat and destroy the Guardian's pen with it. Heck, just place a block over the TNT cannon and have it blow itself up with just a singular block of dirt or something. Heck, if one of those TNT landed on the pen that was inched a little too close to the boat, then that would kill it too. Genuinely, it's a miracle that your boat didn't commit seppuku and capsize itself right here. And I'm not even trying to nitpick that hard. These were the immediate thoughts I had as a Minecraft player that hasn't played in ages. Kid me would have 100% gotten upset at these too, and tried to pawn it off like that other Minecraft book I had as a kid that I mentioned earlier. Anyways, logic aside, the Elder Guardian is out, and this spells trouble for the team, as it picks off lots of damage on everyone, and they'll have to make a temporary alliance if they want to survive. And thanks to teamwork, they successfully kill the Elder Guardian and save Tyler's new friends. Somehow, despite how little has happened, this somehow results in the pirates immediately changing their entire stance on how they play the game, and go from not having any qualms about casualties and having Tyler be bait, to saying, "Did you ever doubt me?" and also agreeing to help rebuild the base they ransacked and give everyone's stuff back. With that, the next day, Evan sees the bully from the beginning of the book and tells him to buzz off or something, and then the problem is instantly solved and the book ends. Much like the previous entry, it felt like the IRL stuff didn't matter that much to the plot. Sure, Evan gets a little bit nervous at the idea of bullies, but that's it. Nothing matters ever when it comes to the real world. That is, until book 3. And it feels like by this book, everyone's improved and has figured out what they actually want to do with the property, which is kind of sad when you remember that this is the last of the Minecraft books that either of these people worked on. Book 3 switches into Sarah Grayley's newer art style, which is much more focused with these bouncy lines and shapes, rounder eyes and pupils, which just in my opinion looks much better for the game world and does these books way more justice. I mean, there's nothing inherently bad about the previous style, it's just that this one looked so much better to me, just so much more vibrant. In this book, Evan and Tyler are excited to finally meet up in real life again as Evan flies out to meet him in his new home, only to mostly just play Minecraft 2 feet away from each other. In the game, however, they find a ruined nether portal and learn all about the new nether update biomes in real time, which Gracie is nervous about. Everyone keeps asking Gracie questions because she's supposedly the nether expert of the group, which disappointingly wasn't shown at all during the Fire books again, only to cut her off a bunch and not pick up on the fact that she doesn't know either and is feeling uncomfortable. She keeps getting frustrated portrayed, especially as for the first time ever in these books, the characters actually die in-game, and everyone seemingly gets upset at Gracie for not telling them what to do, so Gracie gets upset back and quits the game entirely. Everyone realizes that they messed up, and the folks still living near Gracie get her some drinks and snacks and try to make up to her. Gracie explains why they felt pretty awful and that they need a break from the game, while everyone else continues playing and exploring the new Nether. Eventually, Gracie makes up with Tyler over a Discord call, and she eventually tries to pick up the game again, during which she also learns on accident how piglins don't attack you if you wear gold. And they finally go to the bastion that they wanted to explore, and all is happy before the book ends. This book definitely got a lot better with intertwining the real life and in-game aspects. The Tyler and Evan stuff with them getting to meet up in real life didn't add anything really, but the whole Cadence and Gracie thing, mwah. Chef's kiss. Finally, actions have consequences for the whole group and don't instantly do things right or instantly forgive each other and forget it happened. And overall, this book just really felt like what Book 1 should have been. Book 1 should have been about Tyler becoming upset about them summoning the Wither early, and Evan learning to cope with having made a mistake that genuinely hurt their already sore from moving away friend, while Tyler has to accept that because of the move, not everything is going to be exactly the same, and that's okay. And have it actually affect the whole group, both in and out of the game, as they take time to figure out how to fix things, despite not being readily able to just go over to his house like the older days. There is still a little bit of weirdness series-wide in that all of the characters other than Tyler didn't really matter much or have their own moments up until the last book, which also reminds me that the new friends don't actually do anything in book 2 other than being damsels in distress, and then they get erased from existence for book 3, which is especially odd given even though they didn't matter a whole bunch, they were the whole point of book 2 and used as a slight teaser for book 1, and meant to show that Tyler is getting used to the move now. All in all, Minecraft Everrealm was a little below average for the first book, pretty bad for the second, and a little above average for the last in my opinion. But that isn't the only Dark Horse Publishing book that was released at this time, as during the exact same time period we also had Minecraft With or Without You, written and illustrated by Kristen Guznuck. This is our first delve into stories where it genuinely takes place in Minecraft as a universe, so it's not treated as a game, and because of that you aren't thinking as much about, hey, why do I care if he dies if they can just respawn? Because there's that level of suspension of disbelief where you can do some creative things without it needing to be accurate to the games, like how Minecraft Story Mode got to have the Wither Storm. Minecraft With or Without You mainly follows two monster hunting siblings, Kahira and Orion, who when battling through a woodland mansion accidentally summoned the Wither, and in the resultant chaos, their mentor Sinan the Thorough is eaten alive. And now left with nothing but their dog Wilkie, they go on a journey to try and find the Wither and defeat it before they lose their mentor forever, and before it can wreak havoc on innocent cities and lives. Rather quickly, they also come across a sheltered girl named Atria, someone seemingly cursed with a constant monster luring ability that renders them an eternal shut-in and loner living with their mother for the sake of not getting the town raided with zombies. The twins as characters are actually pretty sucky and unlikable for quite a good amount of the book, which especially shows itself when after Atria tells them no to coming with them, they throw a spider into Atria's mind with the sole intention of then saving her from it afterwards to manipulate her into wanting to come with, despite both of them outwardly only wanting her to take advantage of her ability, and Orion outwardly saying that they're gonna get her killed. And in the end, they only get her to come with by promising that Sinan would be able to 100% fix her curse, which given how they talk and act about it, I'm not entirely sure it's true. Unlike the Everrealm books, which skipped most of the battling and traveling and made it way too fast, With or Without You actually shows a lot of combat, which makes sense given that they're monster slayers. I mean, we don't see every little bit of combat, but I'm glad that the book doesn't just immediately forget about the monster lure thing, like I'm sure some authors would have when not directly being a point of conflict. After following the trail for a while, they successfully find the Wither's nest, and when Kahira grabs the wrong item, something which she does multiple times up until now, it actually plays a role in the fight, as they accidentally get the Wither to spit Sinan up. It turns out that he survived because of a totem he got, though that doesn't mean that the fight is over. As things look rough though, Atria tries to distract the creature only to discover that she seemingly has the ability to read mobs' memories and psychically connect with them. And with that, they discover that the Wither wants to return home to the Nether and would likely stop fighting if they like the portal, which the twins quickly oblige once Atria communicates this. After they leave, they quickly dismantle the portal, taking the obsidian with as it's hard to come by. The twins tell Sinan their side of the deal, to which, as I predicted, Sinan isn't 100% able to fix her curse, he just happens to have been cursed many times and can no longer have children because of it. You know, because the whole curse your family bloodline trope. And so they begin to make the trek to someone who can. Book 2 opens with the Wither returning. As in the last panel of the first book, we get a peek into this after they open the portal, because the Wither responded when they immediately returned to the overworld, bringing the Nether creatures into the surface and breaking their deal. Heading to Whitestone City, they meet up with Lucasta, a sorcerer that isn't the biggest fan of Sinan, but is their best bet when when asking about curses. We learn a bit of Sinan and Lucasta's history, but it's not all that important. There's also this scene I really enjoyed on page 19, where Lucasta throws water at an Enderman in a similar way to how a priest might throw holy water at a demon, which I thought was a very creative concept. Lucasta is mainly a mob farmer, which reminds me that this series does a pretty decent job of integrating common gameplay things with Minecraft into the world, and make it pretty clear the writer of this does genuinely play Minecraft and know what casual players do, what mistakes they accidentally make, and how they may act in certain situations, and still making those make sense within the actual world when they're paralleled. For example, back in book 1, Atria's house doesn't have a door because zombies can break down doors, and given she's effectively a living mob spawner, it's just the sensible thing to do and mimics digging yourself into a hole in the ground or surrounding yourself in blocks when in danger. Or how the whole thing with Kahira hitting an enemy with a pork chop or wheat initially is an obvious reference to selecting the wrong thing in your toolbar. Or Atria having diamond armor while the actual monster hunters only have leather and chainmail because you can get leather and chainmail from mob drops, while Atria mined for hers because she's been underground her whole life. Even here in book 2, Atria is surprised to learn that cameras are real, which is because the camera Lucasta has is the exact same as a Minecraft Education Edition exclusive, as many even long-term players are surprised at the non-modded things found in this specific version of the game, like balloons, glow sticks, and medicines. I feel like it's pretty cool that they make these references, but also make them have some sense in universe that still distances it from the games. Anyways, Lucasta claims that they're researching her curse by just having her sit near the mob grinder all day, which Atria quickly puts together that she's lying and just wants her there so the mob farms can generate more mobs to grind, so she ends up leaving. There's some shenanigans with the twins that result in the town feeding their egos, and when Atria leaves to find Kahira, she happens to be telling the story of how they met her, causing Atria to learn about how she was manipulated with the spider in book 1. It's clear that she's still hurt and still upset that she's constantly being used by others for their own whims, but eventually Kahira manages to smooth talk her way back into some of her good graces, and at least agree to walk her back to the mob grinder before Lucasta find out she left. Unfortunately though, the spider thing is never brought up after this, and this whole Atria being upset about feeling used all the time for her curse doesn't ever end up affecting her decisions after this and just isn't brought up, which is a really big shame. There's actually a few different times in which there are character development things you can clearly see are happening, but then this never get resolved. Kahira almost falls into the mob grinder, but she luckily survives because of her new fireproof cloak she just bought while in town. As Atria confronts Lucasta about feeling used, they're cut short when an intruder breaks in. It turns out it was this kid and their baby villager friend, of which the villager had been zombified and the other kid was looking for help. Although begrudgingly, Lucasta tries to get a cure for them, but keeps holding them back because they don't want to actually sacrifice any of their items. This eventually results in the baby zombie villager escaping and infecting the town, which in turn forces Lucasta to sacrifice their things to save the town, literally tearing the gold from their house to make golden apples. The whole scene of them gathering the zombified villagers to avoid them getting burned by the sun is really well paced, and having them be slightly too late for one of them but still barely managing anyways was really good too, as it shows that just because they're the main characters doesn't mean that they instantly succeed at everything they do, and it makes what they accomplish feel like it was genuinely difficult for them. Despite all that Lucasta sacrificed though, she's still outcasted and treated as the cause of the apocalypse, while the kid that technically caused it is hoisted as a hero, even as he and all of the others vouch for and clarify that Lucasta really is the one that stopped everything and cured the zombie villagers. As that itself is pretty interesting too, as this writer in particular really seems to be willing to not just fork over the expected happy conclusion to everything, like how them doing what the Wither wanted and returning him to the Nether doesn't actually solve the problem like you would think with the structure of this story. Or here, how despite Lucasta sacrificing quite a lot, the ordeal not being their fault and genuinely being a victim of circumstance, it still doesn't pull any punches. The village started as a mob mentality group driven by outward appearances and popularity, so naturally when the story ended, they still remained a mob mentality group driven by outward appearances and popularity. If doing this one thing was all it took for Lucasta to be treated fairly, then she would have been treated fairly ages ago. And so I just really like how the writer does these kind of things. Book 3 brings them back to their search for the Wither, now also having a cat which they got from Lucasta right near the end of the last book, and also Orion gets a chicken named Beak Boy 58 pretty suddenly, though neither of them really matter for anything going forward. They make their way forward and plan to stay in a little town, though by the time they arrive, they find that it's been completely destroyed, likely by that Wither they accidentally summoned. It's pretty clear that Orion blames themselves greatly for it and is harboring a lot of guilt, which Kahira is not helping with, and eventually they settle down in one of the abandoned buildings. The next morning, they find a broken down iron golem, which through Atria's psychic mob powers, they confirm indeed is because of the Wither. Kahira brings up that they should come with because they're also fighting the Wither, though just has to shove in the fact that it's Orion's fault again, resulting in the iron golem entering a frenzy, attacking Ryan as they see them as the reason that their village died a horrible death. However, Atria is able to calm them down. Though now reading back through this as I'm recording this, I just realized the iron golem doesn't really matter much either, and the Orion plot with Orion feeling guilty also never gets brought brought up again, which is why bring up plot points that aren't gonna matter later or don't do anything. They journey for a while and there's some more decent fighting scenes like this one with the fences and the creeper before they set up camp again. Chihiro and Orion talk some about their backstory, which Chihiro initially tried to make more interesting sounding by making out to be a self-sacrifice plot, but then the book just does something really stupid that just immediately ruined my immersion and all of the world building I was praising up until now, because their backstory is, and this is a direct quote by the way, one day they just logged off the server of life. So logging off is real, and servers are real, which kind of ruins the whole it's not a literal game thing. And then they ruin it even further with the next panel because they mention checking their recent sleep sites to see if they respawn, which means respawning is a thing too, which kind of retroactively makes the entire conflict of book 1 where they were trying to save their mentor before he completely died stupid and useless, especially with how seriously they were taking it. That then follows the question of why does death even matter at all if you can just respawn? Why do giant crowds of mobs matter if they could all just log off and wait for them to despawn? And before I make a comment to this, they aren't using it as a euphemism for dying either, because it gets brought up later too, multiple times. Like, you just opened the floodgates to a bunch of game logic that you otherwise wouldn't have had to worry about. Anyways, they make their way to Woodhaven and quickly reunite with Atria's mom. Atria's mom wants her to revert her curse with that apple that she got from Lucasta that can cure her. But unfortunately for her, she wants to be a monster hunter now, and has started to feel like her curse has a use that can really help people. As she tells her mom all about her adventures, the Wither just so happens to appear at this very village. In spite of her mother's worries, she goes to lure it away from the town with her mob lure curse. This results in a giant and again, pretty well written and illustrated fight scene with traps and potions and more. And in the fighting, Atria is forced to finally make their decision about the curse as she eats the apple to save her life. Also shortly thereafter, Chihiro almost dies too, but although both of these death scenes are really cool and tense, you then remember that they can literally just respawn so none of this matters. Like, the mom is crying and having this heartfelt moment with Sinan about her daughter possibly being dead, but then you remember that she'll just literally respawn perfectly fine in her bed like nothing happened if she did die. And then when Chihiro is dying, she even outright states that she'll respawn at the abandoned village, but it's still played 100% serious with the same intensity that you'd expect if death actually mattered, with Atria promising to get her a steak herself if she lives this and all this other kind of stuff. And so with that, they continue fighting. They successfully kill the Wither after a long battle. Sinan gives Atria's mom the Nether Star and the town celebrates their new heroes. The book also ends on another really off-putting thing thrown into the world building, because there was this minor thing brought up earlier about Sinan the Thorough being ran out of town because they failed to rescue the beacon, which is why he gives them the Nether Star at the end here, but also he thought he was being run out because Atria's mom was yelling at him. But there's the very sudden reveal that Atria wasn't actually yelling at him, but was trying to call him because, and I'm gonna quote this part too, "One moment I was making youthful googly eyes at you, some handsome monster hunter who just saved my village. The next moment, Atria here spawned. You know how it happens. They just appear out of thin air, no warning, no reason. One moment you're minding your own business, the next a child logs on to the server of life and starts calling you mommy and asking why daddy is running away from her." So basically, I guess canonically in this version of Minecraft, if you look at somebody in any form of romantic or salacious manner, a child instantly spawns in without any consent from either party. Okay, question, why aren't there tsunamis of children? Especially given they explicitly state that you don't actually have to want to be a parent to spawn in children. You don't even have to be close to the person, apparently, given Sinan was running away and had no idea, and also didn't know her, really. Oh yeah, and also, let's look not even a page prior. Yeah. So what's this? What happens here? Is it a weird thing where the effect only takes place when they're actually adults? I mean, for what their sakes, I hope so. But then there's also the question of how far away can you be pining for someone for it to spawn a child? Clearly it does not have to be reciprocated pining, but if she's still thinking of him in however many years, is a child just gonna spawn in? I don't even want to think about this. Why did they write it like this? How does child support work in this universe? Is this why Endermen hate being stared at? Why on earth did they feel the need to include this? It doesn't add anything. You're at the end of the story. Anyways, with this revelation, the squad all decides to live together as a complete family, with Sinan's found family orphan children of Orion and Kahira, and his new and true family of his kind of wife and daughter. Still going out and monster hunting, but also having a real house to settle down in. Overall, I totally thought that the series was better than the Everrealm series, and it still is, but the ending throwing in that respawning is a thing killed all of the tension and interest I had with the battles, which was the series' greatest trait. Even without that though, the pacing was still wonky at times within the writing. Book 1 in the beginning introduction to our cast of characters was easily the worst offender to the pacing, as it feels like the writer was just as eager to get into the fighting and action as Kihiro was, that is to say, running straight into it with little caution or abandon, to the point that several plots would be introduced only to never get resolved again, like Orion's Guild. And also the pets are completely pointless as characters as well. Wilkie, which was the mentor's dog, has a tiny bit of importance in the first book because they help lead them to the Wither, but after that he's barely even a character at all, at best being a background prop that sits there and aids nothing to the plot. And as if Wilkie wasn't useless enough for the plot, in the last book they throw in a cat named Fernando, and then immediately afterwards they get a chicken named Beak Boy 58, of which, again, none of them do anything for the plot other than looking cute, while the characters that actually matter move the plot along. Kristen Goodsnook clearly put a lot of love into this book, and clearly is a Minecraft player that enjoys the game, and was more than willing to shove the book full of references and fun ideas. And as I said, they had a really good grasp on choreographing and pacing these fights, but outside of that, the story is okay-ish. Not good, not bad. Atria and Lucasta really carry a lot of the likable moments, but again, most of the fun you'll have are from things like the zombie invasion in book 2, or Atria learning to fight in book 1, rather than the conclusions like Sinan getting saved, or the Wither being defeated. The fire scene where Atria almost dies is still cool though. Here's one I think is almost certainly the weirdest in concept and is still technically coming out with new books. Minecraft the Manga was created as an official collaboration between CoroCoro Comics and sold on Crunchyroll's official storefront alongside Amazon. CoroCoro Comics is a decently popular monthly children's magazine in Japan and has worked with countless franchises like Beyblade, Uma Musume, Street Fighter, Kirby, 6 whole Pokemon comics including the still ongoing Pokemon Adventure series. They did a Shadow the Hedgehog comic, Splatoon, Animal Crossing. They're currently making an Amazing Digital Circus manga. If you know of a property and it has a weird manga, it's probably created by CoroCoro. Minecraft the Manga was originally started late 2020 and ended mid-2025, written in full Japanese, with it only recently starting to get a translated English version. Something which I genuinely did not believe at first with how very, I guess, Western of a manga it feels like. I genuinely thought that Crunchyroll made that up and that the series was just a really elaborate April Fool's joke they're trying to pass off as being from Japan as part of the joke. There's a total of 12 volumes to its name, however the English serialized manga has only 4 out by the time of writing this, with the 5th one being translated by March 10th, which is the day that I'm recording this. And this video is already taking long enough, so I don't think you can blame me for just reading the first 4. More interestingly though, and something I haven't seen anyone talk about, the actual writer and illustrator of the manga, Kazuyoshi Seto, previously made a manga series in 2017 called Game Genshi Bit, or as it's known in France, Power Gamer Adventure, which although wasn't translated to English to my knowledge, just from looking at the Japanese covers, it has some notable similarities to the Minecraft manga that you can see before you even open the first page, such as the main characters having that eerily similar spiky hairstyle with the green eyes and white pupils in the middle, in a video game world, where they both have video game powers, where in this first cover the character of Game Senshi seems to have an awfully Minecraft looking pickaxe there, and an awfully creeper looking companion in the corner. It almost reminds me how the Minecraft manga also has a protagonist acquire a small creeper companion named Navy. Now I'm not saying that the two manga are exactly the same, especially as these covers also seem to have technically legally distinct versions of other game characters as well, like this green Ao Oni guy. We have the creeper I mentioned, but there's also an Enderman in the background. In volume 2 we have these obvious battle cat characters of the basic and tank cat, just as dogs instead. I think this guy up here may be a reference to the garbage beans from Puyo Puyo, though I'm not 100% sure because again I can't read the manga itself. And of all 3 of the volumes I have access to the covers of, there's this Lucky Block cat character which could just be referencing Mario, but also Lucky Blocks were super prevalent in the Minecraft modding scene if you ever watched any Minecraft YouTuber back in the 2010s. Though even if this other manga they made before is completely different, I kinda have a hunch that they at the minimum just yoinked their main character and or characters from the older manga that they made, freshened them up with some newly officiated Minecraft paint, and then just reused them here. Especially given that within the manga itself, the characters are very tropey, so it wouldn't surprise me if they just took them from one book to the other. But regardless, what is Minecraft the manga actually about, minus the speculation and theoretical self-plagiarism? Is that a thing? Self-plagiarism? Anyways, Minecraft the manga follows Nico White, a 10-year-old living in Theo Village, born to the White family, a long line of adventurers born with a mark on their hand that gives them powers. His mother doesn't want them to go out until he's older, as his father left to find the end of the world shortly after he activated the power of his mark and never returned from his journey. However, Nico, being the typical peppy, reckless shonen protagonist obsessed with going out to adventure since the womb, he accidentally gets to a situation in the child minds and ends up activating their mark. What does the mark do? Well, these marks are actually mods that are gifted from the gods and grant anyone or thing that has them special anomalous powers that vary from useless to literal god. Nico has the ability Mod Power Imagination, which means that he can craft without a crafting table and can craft literally anything that he wants whenever he wants, even if it's not a typical crafting recipe, so long as he has the items to justify it. Kind of. Later on, there are some ultra stupid ones, but because he used his mod power, tradition means that he must finally set out to the journey to the end of the world despite being 10, which is actually what the entire series is about. Nico seeking the end of the world to follow in his father's footsteps, though after this initial chapter it becomes pretty episodic, just going place to place, occasionally gaining new party members or items before moving to the next place. Because of this, many chapters don't matter at all, and while I'll still describe some, know that I'm skipping a lot of chapters and plots here, seeing as there's a bunch of things that don't really matter and never get mentioned ever again, at least between the 4 books that I got to read. Pretty early on though, Nico acquires another adventuring partner named Gray, who also has a mod route, though their mod is significantly less powerful, as while Nico gets the craft literally anything your heart desires mod, they have the permanently look the exact same as the zombie mob, resulting in nobody trusting you from the jump ever and most people instantly wanting to kill you mod. They're kind of the rogue thief class of the group, as they initially try to steal everything from Nico while he sleeps, but then eventually ends up failing when he's attacked by mobs at night and Nico saves them anyways. Gray also has this backstory thing of having kind of just woken up one day with the rune, and with everyone in their village having been turned into mindless zombies, with them as the only one retaining their sanity. It's not actually brought up much, but I just thought I'd bring it up because I talk about it a tiny bit at the end. Also, just to get it out of the way, we should probably talk about the art style, because of those that do talk about this book, they always will mention how weird and off-putting it looks, especially with the weird fingers that aren't blocky while the rest of the body is, and many people comparing this manga's style to those how to draw anime books, or in-media parodies of what anime looks like, and I feel like that rings super true. I should mention that as unbelievable as it sounds, you do kind of get used to how they look within a few books, but even so, there are a lot of times where it feels like they really tried to overdo it with the parody anime faces, which makes it really hard to keep a good flow of immersion with the story. It makes any time they try to get real whatsoever impossible to take seriously. I guess in some ways though, it's very reminiscent of those way too anime-ish mod packs that the old roleplay channels used to use in the 2010s that made everything uncanny and weird looking to try and make it more anime. If anyone knows what I'm talking about. Back to the books themselves though, I really liked this plot where they had to fight an eccentric old man called the Trap Master, whom they defeat the traps of by having Nico create his own traps. There's a ninja named Yamabuchi, who is banished from their village for not being sneaky whatsoever, who pops in every now and then for various plots. There's actually a pretty creative plot that they did where a sailor has them help fight some drowned, in return for being sailed to the other side of the ocean, and it turns out to be because the sailor's brother died at sea and he wants to slay them so they can move on, because the corpses at sea turn into drowned. So that was like a really cool and creative thing for the story to have, and probably one of the best plots they did for this. Chapter 9 is where they finally get that small creeper companion that I mentioned towards the beginning with the whole cover debacle. Basically, they find a creeper with a mod mark evolution, allowing them to talk, jump high, and explode without dying. However, after adding them to the group, it turns out that the other creepers feel like Navy, which is the tiny friendly creeper's name, betrayed them by wanting peace among mobs and people, and has been hunting them down. Though they get defeated later on, and also end up defeating this evil merchant guy that wanted him too. There's an evil scammer village with a guy named Don Gold that can copy mod abilities, and it goes about as well as you'd expect. I'm sure you can tell by the rapid pace I'm going through most of this that the manga doesn't have many super interesting things that happen. It's mostly just enter location, encounter problem, solve problem, leave. To where Nico almost always has the exact solution to any given problem all of the time thanks to just how overpowered their ability is, to the point that you'll often just wonder why Nico doesn't instantly go to it during every problem. And even on the one time something was set back where they made a super long sword and a creeper blows up part of it, there's no real reason to not just craft it again. There's no timer or anything. He doesn't need a crafting table, which is something they tell you constantly throughout the book. And other than needing to have the materials to make it, there are zero restrictions. Sky's the limit. Plus, they find roughly 3 or 4 treasure chests full of diamonds, iron, and gold, and more throughout several missions that they do, not to mention all the things they're getting in between locations, and how overpowered the imagination mod items can get. Like later, Nico just makes an artificial sun with just coal and a torch. I mean, the plots go by fast enough that you're not constantly thinking it, but during half the battles, it's either that he instantly goes to the mod power to solve the problem, or he doesn't use it so he can appear to struggle for a bit, and then he uses it. Because Nico never creates the wrong thing, and it always works exactly how he expected it to, which I believe makes this the third Minecraft book to have overly fast pacing, even if it's not as overt as the other ones are. Upon reaching book 3, the crew gets chased into a hole and find a deactivated iron golem woman named Platinum, who does not look like an iron golem in any way, shape, or form, including the colored front cover that makes her flesh colored rather than made of metal, with their only explanation being, my creator was smarter than most. She also has a mod rune too, called Block Piercer, which lets her break through any block. The four of them then head to a town with a bunch of mob problems and try to help solve it in return that this old adventurer guy that may have met Nico's father tell them about how to get to the end. Nico eventually ends up creating an artificial sun with nothing but a bunch of coal and a torch, which burns all of the mobs away, and they catch some mob tamer guy that was responsible for it. It lasted a lot longer because they made this one last 2 chapters, but trust me, I saved you a lot of time of them just running in circles and saying the same things. Bad guy gets locked up, and our mystery man here is finally willing to tell Nico what he wants to know about the end and about his father. They bring him out to a destroyed stronghold underground, and the retired adventurer tells Nico how they entered the portal and tried to fight the dragon. However, they were a coward and left them and Nico's father behind upon seeing the beast. With that being 9 years ago, they have no clue if he's alive or not, or if they won. And so the retired adventurer does tell Nico how to activate the portal, what they'll need, and how they'll get it. And so Nico and the team need to get the materials to craft Eyes of Ender and find a new stronghold, which is where they start heading. The last volume I have access to again didn't add much and was almost entirely filler. Like this chapter about them farming and having to stop silverfish from eating their crops, or them hunting an enderman, which I guess is technically important because of the Eye of Ender thing, but it's not done in an actually important non-filler way. There's a pie duel in which 2 guys are convinced their bloodline made the first pumpkin pie, and Gray and Navy immediately find both of the ancestors' diaries and they were actually the same person and just had 2 halves of the same book, which immediately fixes it. And also I guess the pie guy went to the nether because they need Nico to go to the nether for the next book, and I guess they just really didn't want to cut the farming episode. So I guess the nether portal is in the pie village, and that's all. That's where we cut it off. I mean, overall, the series is a bit more okay than you'd think just by reading about it. I mean, it's very filler heavy, but overall it's less bad and more tropey. There isn't anything specific I can point to and laugh at other than maybe the fact that every time Nico does anything with his mod powers, he shouts, "This is my craft!" But there also isn't anything that I can point to and say is good either. It's almost boring at times, and that just feels like a very basic shonen anime, but in a Minecraft texture pack. The writing isn't good and can even be boring at times. Most of the characters aren't all that interesting and are mostly one note, where they have one backstory, one RPG class, and one trope each. Like, Nico White is of course the stereotypical young anime warrior boy who is a prodigy, and wants to find their father they never met and be just like them, and is overeager and reckless and has a strong sense of justice, stopping evil whenever they see it, often to the point that they need to be reined back and are like 10 from a small village, which is why they want to go explore the great wide world. Gray has their curse, sure, but after their first meeting, it's never brought up again other than when explicitly mentioning their backstory, because after that, they are just the slightly cocky rogue that is tricky and can plan, but accidentally got roped into being a good guy by the protag, and still harbors a greed for gold and treasure, and swears that's the only reason they come with, but finds themselves helping the protag even if it sacrifices the riches they could get, because now they feel responsible for protecting their new friend, and seeing it through despite all the hijinks they get wrapped up in the process. You have the ninja guy who is a fierce warrior that only cares about honor and becoming the strongest ninja there is, to the point that that's all they see, and where the first protagonist that defeats them causes them to follow them until the end of time so that one day they can defeat them in a fight, because honor or something. And he is socially dense at times to what other people would consider obvious because honor makes them oblivious to lying, I guess. Where protag boy has to go save them despite the fact they're provably stronger than said protagonist. Because, I don't know, honor or something. Platinum the Golem girl is a bit harder in that we haven't actually seen much of her yet, and the same with Navy, but Platinum is definitely the numb, super strong girl that doesn't show emotions much but actually super cares, and is the super powerful tank but must get stronger, which we see some of. And Navy so far seems to be the token critter of the anime, where at most they get a few, I don't know if I could do it guys, and then they go do the thing because the protagonist said they could, but other than that, they just mostly exist to be on the protagonist's head or shoulder and be used for their token niche ability, and that's it. You can especially see this in the 4th volume, where one of the throwaway chapters has them forced to pretend to be a doll, and then accidentally get lost and played around with, which is a pretty common trope in a lot of animes that have the token critter. Again, the manga isn't overly bad, it's just where the only reason I could see someone owning it is to just show off something super niche and weird that most people don't realize exists. And I feel like that's half of the reason nobody's nobody seems to know it exists despite the fact it originally came out 5 years ago, and started officially being translated as of early last year. To this day, there are people who will bring it up in the Minecraft subreddits only to get flooded with "that exists" every single time. Even though the plots that do well, most if not all of them feel half-hearted or like the writer wasn't actually all that into it, like they had an idea for a joke they wanted to do or a cool scene or plot moment, and they just need to fill space to get into it and then fill space to get out of it. And that just makes for a really bad reading experience. I mean, you can really feel this once you get past book 1 and part of book 2, so the fact that this apparently has 12 whole books, I have to wonder how many chapters you could just shear off that would change absolutely nothing within the story. Upon thinking about it more, I honestly feel like it could maybe have worked if instead of a manga, it was like a serialized cartoon or anime, adapting the better or more important chapters, but even then, that doesn't really fix its inherent tropey blandness that coats the very soul of the series. 4.5 cheated speedruns out of 10. Minecraft Heart of Cobblestone is one of the more recent and currently being published series, which as of writing just released its second book. Written by Andrew Clemenson, the person behind comics like Damsel from Distress and Star Bastard, and illustrated by Jeremy Lawson behind a still ongoing series called Imp King, that they actually took a break from so they could work on this very comic. Which on a side note, Imp King is completely free on their website and genuinely really good, someone should really make a video on it. Anyways, the book follows Cobblestone, who's hit with endless troubles as people like to eat from their farm without asking, mess with the order of their farm, and plant potatoes where they don't want them. He's kind of treated as the town's cranky geezer and as having a sharing problem, when I actually feel like it's more of a consent problem of nobody respecting his boundaries or space. He has an older brother named Flint who's an adventurer and the total opposite of him, and also makes it known that they don't like him alongside the rest of the town. And so when his brother kills an enderman and it drops a grass block, he decides to escape into the sky on his very own sky block away from the town, only to soon find that he isn't the only one who thought of this. When another man named Ned finds him, he informs Cobb that there's actually a whole village of like-minded people that all decide to live away up in the skies to avoid their annoying neighbors. However, things upstairs might not be as good as he thinks, and he may have had more friends downstairs than he realized, as he accidentally burns bridges with his neighbor Rochelle, who he never knew liked his company, and starts realizing that this new place in the skies is more of a sky HOA than a sky village, to the point we're told that Ned straight up murdered a guy because they preferred oak planks to acacia, and threw him overboard pirate style. As such, Cobb and eventually Rochelle end up teaming up to save the sky village from the HOA and blow Ned to smithereens. It's actually really good and probably the best of the Minecraft comics that exist out there, in that there are no parts that are bad or miss the logic to an egregious amount, and they don't feel the need to throw Easter eggs and references at you because the characters work a lot better than some of the other books. Obviously, they aren't super deep or anything, but they also aren't shallow, and they feel unique enough for what they really are. Though there's this weird thing that they do in the book that seemingly tries to push the idea that Cobb is just as bad as Ned, and him wanting people to respect his property and not touch his things, and wanting to leave when he hears people complaining about him behind his back, despite the fact that the whole reason Ned is bad is because he forced it on other people. Like, Ned killed a guy over wood. Cobb never told anyone else that they needed to change where they lived or what they did with their houses. He just wanted to be left to his own devices and allowed to do their own thing. So the fact that it's treated as a Cobb having to put up with someone like him, at least within how the story and characters treat it, is a little stupid, but it isn't so bad that it ruins it or makes it an awful read. There's also volume 2 that just came out here in February when I wrote this, which continues off of a treasure map that Rochelle found at the end of the first book from Ned's chests, which Rochelle tries to use to get Cobb to be more adventurous, and although she says she'll go find Flint to find the treasure with, the next morning she goes out on her own, having never even spoken to him. And when they find an extra copy of the map inside their house, Cobb and Flint realize the area she went to is actually incredibly infested with mobs, forcing the two distant brothers to work their differences out for the sake of saving Rochelle from her reckless adventure. They do eventually find her, but having gone so far, Flint and Rochelle convince Cobb to stick it out and stay outside of their comfort zone for a little bit longer so they can find this treasure once and for all. On the way, they find an outpost where Flint throws them straight towards the pillagers, sending everyone into danger, leading to him straight up abandoning Rochelle and almost leading to her dying if not for Cobb, giving her a new view of Flint, a much less respected view given how single-minded he is about his goals. The map eventually leads them to an abandoned and very dangerous village lively with mobs, which they are forced to fight and which gives Cobb their first ever experience battling with a sword. And when the sun comes up, they head down into the mountain and are eventually faced with the very part of the map that Flint and Cobb were concerned about, and which they are forced to traverse through. They actually don't do much with it as they get through it rather fast, which is a little disappointing given how much emphasis they put in on it, which they realize is the reason for the endless mobs attacking the village last night, as Endermen have been taking the blocks and breaking these abandoned mob farms down, causing the mobs within to escape en masse. They find the treasure chest thanks to these broken walls too. However, unfortunately, it looks like this place isn't as abandoned as they thought. They get attacked by the owner of the farm, thinking that they must work for another competing mob farm, only to quickly get defeated by Cobb. Cobb. It is there that we learn that the treasure map and treasure aren't exactly what they thought, as the map was actually for the owner's brother to return home because despite the two being masters at mob farming, the brother wanted to go adventuring, while the treasure was just an old book where they jotted down their old farm ideas as kids. Rochelle seemingly finds their element here, as they find that the stranger is very enthralling to work with, and decide to stay here where they can put their smarts to use once again. And so, Cobb and Flint make their way home, with maybe a little bit more spirit of adventure than they started with. Overall, like I said, it's way better in their characters and story than some of the other books. And this one seems to be the first book to not have way too fast pacing. It was well paced and wasn't super in your face about, look how Minecraft your Minecraft book is, wow! While still taking aspects from the community like having skyblock and cobblestone generators, or the importance of the grass block. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but I feel like a lot of the books get way too scared you'll forget it's a Minecraft book. Like how the Minecraft manga randomly feels the need to give you an actual crafting recipe that you would almost certainly already know if you played the games enough to warrant buying a manga about the games. In general, it just feels like a lot of the books feel the need to give you random tips and tricks that would only really be helpful if you only had a passing interest in the games and not much else. Which again, you'd probably not be buying these unless you were already pretty well into enjoying Minecraft. And so they often just fall into this weird crevice of making sure you know what a creeper is or how maps work in the games, or expecting you to not know what a stronghold is, to the point that the books often feel like they're neglecting the people that are reading the book to handhold an audience that doesn't exist and thus won't be there to read it, with the only thing to hold over the main audience being little surface level references like a painting in the background being a Minecraft painting from the games or something. And given all but one of these books are from the same publishing house, that being Dark Horse, I wonder if for these initial series like With or Without You or Everrealm, if they were too scared to go all in on experienced fans and interfered with the writer's vision to instead go halvesies and make sure on the off chance that a super low level fan that hasn't experienced much of the game can still understand it despite not knowing much about the games. That's why all of the really interesting things and references to the actual games, like references to the different editions and With or Without You, are mostly off to the side quick references that don't actually get to mean much within the actual plot. And that's also why these Heart of Cobblestone books, which came out almost 5 years later into their multiple stunts and attempts at Minecraft comics, are being allowed to let looser, and are being given less restrictions. Dark Horse may have tried to make it more broadly appealing, only to see that it was too broad, and given nobody's talking about them or seems to know they exist, is with this next set letting them focus less on the Minecraftery and more on the actual comic graphic novel aspect. But that's just a theory though. A comic theory. Thanks for not watching because we still have more to go through, including the other newer Dark Horse series that as of writing only has one book to its name and will be releasing its second issue later this year. Minecraft Out of Order. Written and illustrated by Josh Hicks, they're yet another experienced graphic novelist, having worked on series like Hotelier, Luxury Class Defense, You vs. the Poison Plot, and even directed a short film called Spectre of the Bear. I hope you didn't miss the HOA though, because this seems to be another one of those character that doesn't want to leave their comfort zone is met with evil force that wants nothing to change ever so badly that it results in the protag realizing change is good sometimes actually. Type of plots again? In this case, the book follows Riley, a farmer living in a place called the Hamlet, who talks en masse about how scary and deadly the outside is and why you should be as content as you are here. Until one day the town gets invaded by the book's version of the Sky HOA, called the Providence of Perfect Sameness. Very on the nose, I know. After the Providence of Perfect Sameness destroys the town for having a lack of symmetry and unappealing wood, and everyone in the town just kind of gives up and decides it would be better to just find another village, Riley thinks otherwise, and another person, Charlie, is the only person to willingly join him. Charlie being the much more optimistic, bouncier engineering type that loves friendship because they were separate from society for a time, and joins the farmer to help them defeat the HOA. Which, you know, I could have swore I've heard of another book about a farmer that doesn't like change. And then their worldview gets shaken by people who are more extremist about the dislike of change to the point they destroy things and kill people over block choices. And is forced to team up with a more optimistic, bubbly person that likes machines and is much more gung-ho because of how alone they used to be. And slowly changes their worldview over the course of the first book in the series. And then there's also a super adventurous fighter person that is the opposite of the farmer and is so single-minded about combat and adventure that they throw themselves at any conflict without thinking about those around them, and whom doesn't understand social cues particularly well because they just like to fight and adventure. And they all go fight against the bad people who want everything to stay the same to the point of hurting other towns that go against what they think looks appealing. And it ends with them blowing up said bad people's main base. It's also extra weird given that these were definitely in production at roughly the same time, given they're being published in a group with Heart of Cobble, similar to how Everrealm and With or Without You were being released simultaneously. Which makes me wonder if Dark Horse gave them both the same prompt of story to make? Because I highly doubt this is a plagiarism thing given the different directions they went for the outer plot, but of the one-sentence pitch of what these books are at their core is very telling that something happened here even if we don't know what. Anyways, Riley and Charlie both head out into the woods and eventually find the fighter person I mentioned who's named Emily. And the three plan to fight against the Providence of Perfect Sameness together, eventually digging into it from underground and using a machine to heist their stuff, while the two leaders of the province are away attacking the town that the others try to escape to. However, an explosion results in them returning and fighting the group. Riley very jarringly has an epiphany that the twin rulers destroy things that are different out of fear, and tells them, hey, maybe don't kill people over funky houses. That immediately makes them go, hey, actually maybe murdering people and destroying their things over asymmetry is wrong actually. And then the twins say they never actually wanted to hurt anyone and it was just their advisor guy's fault. And then the advisor guy outwardly does this very stereotypical villain monologue about how they are a puppet master or something with an evil laugh and everything. Then he immediately gets defeated by the Bouncinator that Charlie built off screen, I guess, because who cares about tension when you can just have the problem instantly be solved before you even had a chance to be invested. And with that, Riley convinces them to move to the hamlet and then everything goes perfectly back to normal again. This book, and it kind of hurts for me to say this a little, given I know that there's like a real person behind this and everything, is probably the worst of all of the Minecraft graphic novels. Technically, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's very much not the best to any regard, to the point that the entire book feels like a first draft, especially with its very hands of the author-y dialogue that almost feel worse than Everrealm's hands of the author moments at some points, where it feels less like you're reading a story with characters and more like you're reading a vague outline of what a story could be, full of lots of temporary dialogue so you know roughly what's supposed to happen. Which also makes the extreme lack of subtlety in everything the book does feel like they were going to go back and make it better on the second or third draft, but just never made one. I especially say the whole first draft thing because there are many aspects that just don't make sense if you read it a second time. Like, they try to make Riley this person that's scared of the outside world and doesn't want to leave their bubble, but from the jump, he is the first guy that wants to go get everyone's stuff back. The only reason I know this is what they were going for in the first place is because they outwardly state it at the start of the book, and then at the end when he's trying to convince the twins, he says it again. But if you actually read the book itself, Riley's actions paint a totally different picture. Same goes with the Providence of Perfect Sameness and the two twins. We're told that the Providence of Perfect Sameness' whole goal is that they want to make the world look better and that anything that looks ugly or unsymmetrical should be destroyed. But if that's the case, then why is their main means of destruction when they begin attacking both towns TNT, the most chaotic and destructive thing that you could use that I highly doubt is making symmetrical holes in the ground? Or with the whole the advisor was making them do it all along and they just had no idea thing. Why then did they have their introductory scene very clearly show the twins being the ones to see it and want it destroyed, with the advisor's only word in the scene being when he repeats what the twins just said and that's it? If the twins were never okay with the murder thing ever and didn't actually want to hurt anyone, then why did they hit one of the townspeople at the very start of the book so hard that one of the other characters makes two separate references to them being hurt enough that they should take it easy? Why did one of the sameness guards think they'd get a promotion for executing a deserter? On page 54, why does this guard have a sword up to this iron golem's neck and say, one false move and we'll smelt you into ingots? It also feels very low level when it comes to its jokes as well, where many of them boil down to, I'm not a scaredy cat, and then they get scared with a cat next to them to really make sure you understand the amazing joke they're putting down. Or again, where at the end of the book, the townspeople say, a toast, and they are holding literal toast. Ha 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 ha, Lamau Raffle, I'm rolling on the floor and crying and dying. Later on, Charlie tells Emily no long-winded guilt rants, and Emily says, my rants are always the correct amount of winded, but I'll try my best. Laugh track. We're back at the end of the book where we see the twins' new house that they made, and they claim that they gave up on symmetry, and Riley points out that they look the same, only for them to correct them because the houses have different colored doors. See how funny and creative the humor is? My face is entirely deadpan, wow! And these jokes could have worked. I feel like half the reason they didn't is because of how already played out and done to death all of these jokes are, to where you can predict it so well that the punchline is more of a dodge at best and a tumble at worst, as nearly all of them boil down to, I said a thing and then it happened, or I said one thing but then the opposite happened. And there's very little in between. If you're lucky, maybe you get a play on words, but even then it's not done in any particularly creative or interesting way, which instantly kills any punch the punchline needed if it wanted to get at the very minimum a light nose exhale. The story isn't good, the characters aren't well written, the jokes are bland. Pretty much everything you can get here you can get somewhere else much better. Even within Minecraft properties themselves, as like I said earlier, Heart of Cobblestone has pretty much the exact same vague premise and does it much better in every department. Characters, jokes, story, themes, even how they incorporate the Minecraft elements themselves. Although things happen quickly and it doesn't suffer so much from the speedrunning syndrome that nearly every other Minecraft book had, it feels weirdly slow despite the fact that it very much isn't. So maybe it's from it just not being as engaging even compared to the other books that felt sluggish or boring at times, but I remember feeling so dragged on and tired with this book in particular, only to find out that I wasn't even halfway done with it, despite the fact that it's a meager 85 pages. But also despite the fact that this is only one book while the others had like 3 or 4 books each. That alone should tell you something about how slow and sluggish this book felt. In fact, I was so surprised at how little I enjoyed this book that I even went as far as looking at one of Josh Hick's previous works just to see if that's how he writes. But upon looking at Hotelier, Luxury Class Defense, and Hospitality Unit, yeah, no, it's a lot better. Again, it isn't perfect and still has some wonkiness, but it has way better jokes, way better story. It isn't bludgeoning me over the back of the skull with their giving character tropes. Hotelier still carries some problems, like building up a problem only for it to be solved off screen. And they have one joke of the, hey, I'm not blank, and then blank appears variety, but most of the jokes are rather witty and well written. The characters feel pretty alright. Don't know what happened with the Minecraft book, given this is clearly an experienced writer, and given Hotelier just came out 1 year prior to Out of Order, and this was just so much better than it. Now, I'm not really sure what else to say about this book, so I think that leaves us with one final thing. Okay, this final one I'm gonna explain myself on. Basically, when I was looking for these Minecraft books, there's usually an official Mojang seal of approval that is on the cover. But other than that, there isn't really like a list I can go to that has every single official Minecraft book ever or anything. And as such, I mostly had to rely on what I could find on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and trust the images on the listings. Now, lucky for me, the wide majority of these books were available at my local library. Shout out local library, go get a library card and help your local community. But there was one book series that wasn't available there, that being Diary of an 8-Bit Warrior, and so naturally, I bought it separately. I bought it because the listing I bought it from had the official Mojang seal on the front, the same one that all of the official books have on them. Except they aren't official. Sometime after I got the box set, I learned that this book series is not official, has never listed itself as official, and that the person I bought it from had photoshopped the seal on the listing page. As on the back of every single one of these books is a little box that clearly says, an unofficial Minecraft adventure, and it's printed on the bottom and on the set's box sleeve as well. Now, I should also state that I don't think this listing was officially from the original author of the series either, as apparently this goes for $40 according to the bottom, while I bought this set for a fourth of that, so no hate to the actual author as they labeled it correctly on their end, but the person I bought this from is definitely a scammer because I can no longer find their listing to show the fake Mojang seal. But I do have the books, so rather than just hucking these straight into the bin or something, I think this is a fantastic opportunity to compare whether the fan-made unofficial stuff is better than the official Mojang approved books that we've been getting all this time. So how about we dive in anyways and get a good look at Diary of an 8-Bit Warrior. Diary of an 8-Bit Warrior is actually a graphic novel adaptation of a written book, specifically a chapter book which was originally written back in 2016. In fact, the writer behind it, CubeKid, has actually almost exclusively been making these unofficial Minecraft books since around 2015, with a series called Nether Kitten which evolved into Tales of an 8-Bit Kitten in 2018. Though their most well-known book is, again, Diary of an 8-Bit Warrior, which after the rapid success of their first few ebooks, the series as a whole was acquired by an actual publishing company called Eddy 8. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly? A French publishing house that paved the way into making their fanfictions physical and publishing it for the first time in France in February of 2016, rebranding it as Le Journal d'un Noob, or Diary of a Noob, and starting to translate and publish it here in the Americas as Diary of an 8-Bit Warrior officially. Well, unofficially because it wasn't officiated by Mojang, but this was during the big 2015 to 2018 Minecraft boom, where they weren't the only people making unofficial merchandising, and so despite this, they went ahead with it, and given Mojang never struck them down, it seems like the big dogs at Microsoft either don't care or told them that they could so long as they labeled it as unofficial. Because of this acquisition, they also got the rights to begin adapting the now chapter book series into a graphic novel series following the same story. And so, Eddy 8, then with the permission of CubeKid, passed the rights down to another publishing house part of their network for a French graphic novel adaptation to be made, who in turn gave the project to Pirate Sorcel, who then adapted the story, and Jez, who illustrated it. From there, it was then translated back into English by Tanya Gold, of whom is only credited on one page in tiny text on page 2 alongside crediting Notch himself for Minecraft as a whole, which I feel is a little dick dickish given the context of how many hands this thing had to go through. I feel like she deserved to go on the front too with everybody else. But anyways, Diary of an 8-Bit Warrior follows two separate outcasts. A villager child named Runt that wants to be a warrior, and a zombie child named Blurp that wants peace and alliance amongst the mobs. And when both are bullied because they don't match what is typical for their mob societies, they both run away from home and meet each other by pure chance. However, things wind up being more difficult than expected for both of them as Runt keeps throwing themselves into dangerous situations they can't handle yet, and Blurp finds themselves having to pretend that they aren't a zombie at all while trying to resist their urges to eat their newfound friend. They also get a dog pretty early on, which they name Mob Slayer, which upon finding an Enderman, Blurp is forced to reveal their monster self in an attempt to get the Enderman to calm down, but unfortunately both them and Mob Slayer both fall off a cliff together. Runt is luckily pretty accepting of Blurp being a zombie, but they find themselves journeying long and hard to find their lost dog again. This also ends up resulting in a situation where Runt ends up having to pretend to be a zombie by wearing a pumpkin head so they can rest the night without risk of getting attacked by mobs, only to get chased out of there. Which in my opinion, the whole scene was pretty good as it builds on the relationship and swaps the circumstances of their first meeting, with Blurp now being the normal one and Runt having to pretend to be something else, causing them to look odd in several situations just like Blurp had with him the day prior. Speaking of, this book series in general has some pretty okay pacing, and although the characters are tropey kind of like the manga, they don't feel nearly as bad to read. You may notice the tropes, but they aren't so in your face you can predict everything they'll do or make you dislike seeing them on screen. In fact, you'll find yourself enjoying them by the time you're through the first book, especially with how much less padding there is compared to nearly every other Minecraft book we read today. After getting chased out of the zombie village, they find their dog again, which had acquired an ender pearl from their fight with the Enderman, and they also find another warrior named Maggie, whose whole thing is that they're really unlucky and have a bad sense of direction all the time. Upon taking them in, this warrior teaches them how to actually get to the end, as Runt wants to go there because they think that's what makes a real warrior, and Maggie explains that they need to combine these ender pearls with blaze powder found in the nether, and while she knows everything there is to know, her horrible luck has made her unconfident enough that she hasn't even stepped foot in the nether despite having a portal completely built. And so she opts to send these two kids she's never met before into hell. Thanks, Maggie! And they barely escape several waves of mobs with their lives. And when they do find a blaze, they can barely do a thing against it, despite being given diamond armor and weapons. But luckily for them, Maggie suddenly changed their mind and also somehow managed to find them despite their bad direction skills and help defeat the blazes and get those rods. Not without trouble, however, as they still find themselves scampering for an exit and hurry through a portal that doesn't exactly look like the one they came from. This of course because Maggie is still terrible at directions, resulting in them reappearing on the overworld in some other guy's house. This being Alberic, someone who apparently Maggie has some kind of bad history with, resulting in them leaving as quickly as they come. And Alberic doesn't like them either, as after learning Maggie is teamed up with a zombie, he quickly begins tailing them, ends up getting to their house before they do, he straight up throws the dog into the nether, and then attempts to eavesdrop when they return. It is here that Alberic learns of their plans to find the stronghold and take on the end, and Alberic plans to stop them, taking the dog back out of the nether and forcing it to find the group. Though we also have a new character named Bagel, who's his excitable apprentice. When our A crew reach the stronghold and experience some light shenanigans, they find the portal and realize that they need a bit more than one eye. And so after some arguing, they decide the best course of action is to head to the village to get more eyes from a priest, while Runt stays behind, which results in them encountering Alberic and his lackeys when they reach the tunnels. They get confronted and Runt is forced to hide, but as Alberic tries to hunt the kid down, he finds several mysterious signs and encounters something that completely collapses the stronghold, with Bagel and Runt forced to flee with their tail between their legs. Bagel is absolutely horrified at the idea of their master and mentor being left behind and begs Runt for help, and although hesitant at first given the whole situation so far, opts to help her because she saved his life and brought his dog back. And because Maggie gets lost all of the time and that's her one trait, she's only a few blocks away despite the day's worth of traveling. So they get help from her too. She's even more hesitant because of the bad blood, but agrees to help only because both Runt and Blurp are insistent on helping Alberic anyways despite knowing he's been a bad guy to them. Much to their surprise though, they find them hunched over the crater of a stronghold turned into a zombie, of whom mindlessly attacks them. There's a pretty okay fight scene, but nothing as good as the With or Without You fights, but by the end, Maggie knocks him back into conscious thought. Upon regaining awareness, Alberic isn't the most pleased to know that they've turned into exactly what they once hated, but tell Maggie that they had traded what they could for as many ender pearls as possible for the portal for her, because they were actually friends in the past, with the only condition being that if they defeat the dragon, they have to also avenge him and defeat Herobrine. Yeah, I'm as surprised as you are that none of the official books even mentioned Herobrine while this unofficial one did. And also, yes, that entity from earlier was indeed Herobrine. It is implied to to be the reason that Alberic turned into a zombie. Though in this universe, he's apparently a sorcerer, not like an apparition like in the OG rumors. He basically acts as a lich stand-in. The book continues for a while with them crafting and preparing for the dragon, before starting to head back towards the stronghold, needing to stop and rest, and Alberic just keeps being awful to Blurp for being a zombie despite now also being a zombie himself, and starts to generally get to Blurp. This prompts Maggie to tell Alberic's backstory of why he hates zombies so much. And it's because Alberic and Maggie used to be a group of 5, but when a massive horde of Herobrine-controlled zombies attacked everyone died except for Alberic and Maggie, who both fled and feel immeasurable survivor's guilt over what happened to their old friends. Runt is still mad at Alberic for treating Blurp so badly, especially given he had nothing to do with what happened to his friends. But when he goes to find him, he finds that Blurp has gone and ran away. Blurp accidentally comes across the zombies from their old cave who bully him, and Runt comes in clutch only to get absolutely hoarded by the zombie town from which they ran away from. But then Alberic comes in clutch ×2 to fight the horde and protect them. They return to camp, and Alberic officially apologizes and says that he was wrong to Blurp, and they all rest up for the night. The next morning, they head into the portal, but despite saying that they'd go at it as a team, Alberic and Maggie make the last-second decision to stop the others from coming by destroying the bridge because they feel like this is their battle and don't want to risk the lives of some kids. Runt promptly ignores this though, as the moment they get through, he rebuilds the bridge and rallies the others to disobey their order and help anyways because they're a team and can't leave each other behind. With that, there's a long and detailed fight against the dragon, with everyone really pitching in, like Bagel using arrows, Mobslayer and Runt killing some Endermen, and Blurp actually getting picked up but throwing their sword above him and into its skull, dropping him. It's a very tough fight and they're low on materials, but after discovering that the Ender Crystal Blast damages it, Alberic straight up sacrifices himself to kamikaze the dragon. After an emotional sacrifice, it's quickly found that his sacrifice was in vain, as although they killed the dragon, all it left behind was an egg, when they were seeking to destroy the dragon in hopes of finding something to help destroy Herobrine. However, the others try to keep their heads high and positive as they return home. The next book opens up to the now 4 of them again, meeting this village priest, which is surprised that they successfully defeated the end and got the egg, and leads them to their village to celebrate, this being a completely different village to Runt's home village. Bagel is a little concerned from the jump, but Maggie tells him not to worry about it. However, we are quickly shown this hunch is right, as the village takes their armor and weapons under the pretense of repairing them, only to immediately huck them for sale. This is because after they're lulled in to stay for dinner, it is quickly found that the reason they were being treated so well is because the village believes that by sacrificing them, that Herobrine will stop attacking their village. As such, they all get tied up and taken by Gollum to the execution site on the top of the mountain. I think this is also a good time to mention that many of the official books had these mechanics or references tacked on, to the point that nearly all of the other graphic novels and comics just felt like generic fantasy plots with Minecraft references jammed in there, while on the other side, these books did a lot better with actually incorporating them in a natural way, as best shown in this scene where the way that they escape is by giving the Iron Golem a poppy flower that they happen to find on the way to the execution site, which is a reference to a behavior that golems have with villagers in-game. It feels incorporated but not forced or Deus Ex Machina-y, or worse, doesn't doubt the reader's knowledge on it while still giving an explanation to those that may not see a connection. So you aren't lost if you don't know, but you aren't treated like an idiot either. Either way though, they escape, and with no sacrifice as tribute, Herobrine attacks the village in anger, and Runt, being the true hard protagonist that he is, goes down and rallies everyone to fight back despite their beliefs that villagers can't be fighters. This actually works out really well despite many of them having never wielded a sword themselves, but things turn dire once more when suddenly another horde appears to replace the last. One which, much like Alberic, contains a previous friend of Maggie's named Mask, zombified and with the possibility of returning to their senses. Despite the tough battle though, they manage to tie him up and once again save the village. It also gets brought up afterwards by the priest that Alberic may be able to get revived if they revive the dragon somehow, because he died in the end or something. They don't make it super clear how the two are connected or why on earth they'd want to go through that again, but they immediately decide they're gonna go figure out how to do that next. Back at Maggie's, they find the place is completely ransacked and find 2 zombies inside that they quickly kill. Oddly though, they didn't take anything, and the only book that's still on the bookshelf is the exact one they need to figure out the whole reviving thing. Maggie and Bagel also end up having multiple fights with one another because Bagel immediately wants to just jump in and get Alberic back as soon as possible, while Maggie wants to take a step back and come up with an actual plan before they do. This fight resulting in Maggie sitting outside ready to leave pretty much immediately. Runt gets tasked with trying to talk some sense into her, however accidentally agrees to come along and isn't sure how to back out of it, and instead tries really hard to set them back and try to make things take longer, but every time they try to, they end up helping to speed things up in the process. For example, he tries to say that there's another village randomly in the desert, only for this to exactly be correct. It ends up being a ghost town, clearly abandoned, save for a suspicious zombie traveler that gives them everything they need for the ritual for completely free. After the whole ordeal, Runt finally manages to tell them that this isn't a good idea, and despite the fight that Bagel and Maggie just had last night, they should still talk things out because the dragon was tough enough the first time and they can't do this just the 2 of them. But despite her begrudgingly agreeing to this, they find that they can't return home. For whatever reason, every time they get closer to the plains, they seemingly just teleport back. Not only that, but the village that they were just at disappeared entirely as if it never existed, meaning that they're trapped in the desert. After a sandstorm blows through, they're magically at the end now, I guess. It's honestly really dumb, and they don't explain it that well, but because they're at the end, they, naturally, immediately revive the Ender Dragon, despite not having any weapons on them whatsoever. Runt tries to last minute stop the resurrection by destroying the last crystal with his bare hands, but it resurrects itself again and again. Bagel finally realizes that they're being played and that Herobrine was manipulating them into bringing it back, and Herobrine drops the pretenses by summoning a plague of undead, which in order to survive, Runt ends up completing the ritual and Alberic returns, but so does the dragon. Now this is where I should probably mention that this isn't technically the true end, it's like some kind of weird pseudo end, and Herobrine tricked them into setting the Ender Dragon free into the overworld, but it's not really explained much other than Herobrine, because then why is the sky like this if they're just underground? Why did the ritual work not just with the dragon aspect of it, but also the Alberic aspect that Herobrine would obviously not want? Why is all this prepared under the sand? But whatever, they get out of the desert, take Alberic home, and then they all tell Maggie and the crew about the second dragon. They, however, get confused because they all assume that they're referring to the egg, as it too just hatched during that whole ordeal, as they now have a baby dragon that Blurp named Sweet Pea. Either way though, the crew are now made aware of the adult dragon, now terrorizing the world, which leads us to our final book in the set, Battle for the Dragon. We open up several months later with a new base, new crew as the snow villagers have sworn themselves to the cause, and Mask now being more mentally sound. Also, Mob Slayer somehow got pregnant. It doesn't really add anything, but here it is. On the dragon side of things, there's been an ongoing effort to train their new baby dragon, though it has been far from smooth. In the night though, Maggie and Runt spot some zombies carrying a cage along the road that seemingly contains another old friend of Maggie's named Peter. They get him out of there and take him back to camp, and Alberic is very happy to see him again too, so they immediately feed him, show him the dragon, and let him in on their plans to defeat Herobrine. I think you can kind of see where this is going, given the emphasis on that last part. In the morning, Peter takes Runt down to an inn where there are many warriors chilling out, and drugs the child before telling everyone that this child villager and the crew back at base are working for Herobrine. This double cross by Peter resulting in the whole Tavern of Adventurers coming to raid the cave base. Runt is also kidnapped and almost murdered by an inn guy as well before Steve saves him. Remember Steve? He exists too in this universe. He just hasn't been all that important for the plot, like at all, and has only really been referenced. Steve confronts Runt and gets a story straight from the source, and so Steve officially joins the group of merry men. They rush back to the cave base to find it being actively sieged, and Peter is in active combat with Alberic and Maggie, where he reveals the double cross and how he was brought back to life by Herobrine under the condition of killing them and stealing the dragon. About to run them through, Steve finished telling the Tavern of Warriors the real side of the story, turning the tide and tying up the traitor. With that, they now truly have an army, as the apologetic warriors join them too. After the battle and reversal, Runt and Blurp both have a startling nightmare the following night. In that, they have a nightmare conversation with Herobrine demanding the dragon be taken to him or everyone will die. And Runt finds that this dream may be more real than it seems because when he wakes up, he finds an H burned into his arm, which disappears by the time he tries to tell the others. Blurp, who had the same dream, thinks that they shouldn't give Sweet Pea, while Runt is uncharacteristically pessimistic, thinking that they should. After a minor spat with him about it, he sits alone to think about it, only for Notch to appear suddenly and give him a wooden sword before just disappearing for some reason. Okay. After that happens, Runt immediately takes Sweet Pea anyway, and heads for Herobrine to do the deal. And unsurprisingly, it's a trap, and while Herobrine agrees to spare him, he does not grant that courtesy to his friends. Will have him trapped in his mansion forever, and has Sweet Pea turned into stone. The group back at home realize what happens and give chase, eventually finding Herobrine's castle, fighting through the waves of mobs, and eventually being forced to dig underground to force their way inside. They find another one of Maggie's old friends, which ends up not only being another trap, but also results in Maggie getting bitten and turned into a zombie. That and also the entire army still fighting the front that they ditched all got turned as well. You know, the two armies of villagers and warriors that they just abandoned. Great going, guys! They go up and find Runt, who isn't fake, and it turns out that the wooden sword he got from Notch is enchanted. Herobrine then shows up and Runt says that he's not going down without a fight. He gets punted into the mob pile below, and it turns out his blade is enchanted with the power of Deus Ex Machina, because it instantly wipes out the horde of 3 armies worth of zombies, instantly kills the dragon, and then Herobrine does a Kamehameha and Runt blocks it, and then Herobrine instantly dies. And then they win. Yup. so close to having an actually good Minecraft series. But we can't have that. No. Let's just instantly solve the conflict we've been building up for the past 4 books with the weapon that was just randomly given to them the last second that has the ability of instant death because I said so, that was given by literal God. You know how I was annoyed that the Wither thing in the Everrealm book was solved in just 10 pages? Or how Out of Order had their villain immediately defeated? Yeah, try 5 pages. 5! Runt defeats the zombie army of thousands of zombies, plus their friends, plus the snow villagers, the revived Ender Dragon, and Herobrine, all in just 5 pages. All of them. And reminder that this weapon was given this book and basically amounted to, hi, I'm God, here's a wood sword, swoop. And was 2 pages! 2 pages long! And then not brought up again until this very moment when he used it. My God, did they ruin it? They ruined it! Runt didn't beat the main villain with anything they learned or gained, or the power of friendship, or strategy, or proving them wrong, or being underestimated and Herobrine dying to his hubris, or anything. Everything dies in just 5 pages, and the main boss that everyone is afraid of as such an untouchable thing that they were nearly sacrificed a book ago like an Aztec god, and he just dies in 2 pages in a single parried blow. I hate it when books do this. What was the point of anything that I read at all? Why do this? Why do so many books do this? My God. Anyways, due to Herobrine getting /kill commanded, everyone who was a zombie and died immediately unzombies and undies, because who cares, I guess, the book is over. And then Notch appears and says, good job, kid, and then disappears because who cares, I guess, the book is over. Roll credits, end scene. Up until the ending, I felt like this book series did easily the best job at doing a Minecraft graphic novel or comic or manga or anything. And in fact, I still kind of feel that way. This book series does a way better job at calling back to things that happened within the story rather than just moving on and then immediately forgetting about them. Not just with the whole Chekhov's gun way, but also with things that happened in previous books, which may not sound like a lot, but you need to understand that basically none of the Minecraft books do this. So for one of the books to finally respect the time I'm putting into reading them felt really good. For example, after Albrecht dies the first time, I really liked how the characters were actually affected by his passing and death, and how it was shown in their actions, which also made me feel a bit irked at them getting brought back to life, but overall didn't ruin much. And we get lots of these moments where characters foreshadow things earlier in the book, sometimes a bit too blatantly, but there are times like in the 4th book where Albrecht mentions playing dead as a strategy only to then play dead in the fight with Peter, which is something I had to cut out in my summary because it didn't matter too much, but was a good use of foreshadowing. Or all the way back in the 1st book, one of the first scenes is Runt being taught what to do if they encounter an Enderman, only to then encounter an Enderman later on that very same book, and then not fully know what to do because of the fact that he had cut off the lecture earlier. As such, the book is really well put together. I also mentioned earlier how they incorporate the Minecraft elements really well in a way that doesn't take you out of the story and also feels very clever. If I were to rank each of the books in this, I feel like the order of the 4 volumes worst to best would be something like 4th, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, as the 3rd book definitely had the best in terms of pacing and plots, especially with it having the aftermath of Albrecht's death on top of the whole Snow Village betrayal thing, while I feel like the 4th book ruined everything they built up with a first act that didn't really add anything to the big Herobrine fight, and thanks to the big Notch weapon that he just randomly gets, it isn't an earned victory whatsoever. He's just given an instant murder button by God. Like seriously, do you remember Peter? Remember the guys at the tavern that help? Remember Mob Slayer's puppies? Well, Peter's just tied up and adds nothing for the plot whatsoever after he's defeated and didn't really add anything before either. The guys at the tavern instantly get zombified and serve the same plot relevance as the Snow Villagers, and Mob Slayer and their puppies don't do anything afterwards other than sniff out a location which Mob Slayer could have easily done herself like she had every other time. And for a series which up until this point was pretty good at making everything matter at some point in the future towards the plot or mean something with the characters, this is really uncharacteristically rushed. I mean, maybe it was like that in the original books, but they had multiple years to fix it all if true. Again, this graphic novel series came out in 2021, years after the original books, and the final installment in the 4-book set came out in 2023. There was no reason to rush, but they did, and it honestly hurts me given how much better they did than all of the official Mojang sanctioned books. They fixed the pacing issues and chronic speedrunning disease of the Dark Horse publishing books. They don't talk down to you. It again incorporates a Minecraft without making you feel dumb and without making you question the logic. It has characters with character, and it was pretty good outside of the one fatal Achilles heel that is the ending. Either way though, overall, official Minecraft comics are weird. Are they bad? I mean, They're more boring or milquetoast than anything, very held back in one reason or another, in that they don't want to risk a lot, and because of that, they aren't funny bad, but they also aren't enjoyable good. I'm sure some people can enjoy them, especially with the better series like With or Without You or Heart of Cobblestone, but they all have these odd qualities to them that just hold them back from being something truly good. I mean, 8-Bit Warrior, despite being a fan-made thing, was released alongside Everrealm and With or Without You at the same time during the same period, 2021 to 2023. But with all of the strugglings of the official stuff like Out of Order or in some cases the manga, if you would have given them to me as a child, I would have burned your house down. In Minecraft.
This is fine.
Anyways, with that, I believe I deserve a good pat on the head, so please like the video, hype the video, strike the video, give me some good comments, whatever new feature YouTube adds to confuse everyone about how the platform functions, and chip the bellhop, my friends, because I'll be seeing you around. Bye!